This is WPSL Port St. Lucie, the talk of the Treasure Coast.
.07 at WPSL 1590, the talk of the Treasure Coast. You're on Ask a Rabbi.
And this is Rabbi Shafir Lobb of Congregation Eitz Chayim, your Jewish home on the Treasure Coast. And I'm trying once again with technology to have this fun time. Okay. Oh, well, it's not going to let me share it. What can I say? Sometimes it lets me, sometimes it doesn't. That's life. Anyway.
You have YouTube.
I have YouTube.
And it's working fine.
Yeah, I have it. It's on the temple site. I wanted to put it on my site as well, but it's not letting me go there.
Oh,
you know, what can I say?
So how was your week?
My week was actually quite great. Very full. Very, very full, and that's fine. I do want to give a shout out to Rick Hall. He has a nursery down in Stewart. This didn't come from him. This came from my backyard. But for those who can see it.
Oh, that's beautiful.
Isn't that gorgeous? So.
Yeah.
Yeah. And it broke off in the wind last night. So
boy.
It's. But here's an interesting piece of it, right? The flowers are actually these white things that are down in there. And I'll
sticking out the sides. Yeah.
Right. These are called bracts, and they're much like a bougainvillea, which has the colored leaves. They're colored leaves, same as a poinsettia. Many plants do that. They have colored leaves to attract the insects because the flower itself is not striking. and nature.
Wait a minute.
Yeah, you would think that it would make striking flowers, but it doesn't. Everybody makes evolutionary choices, including plants. And so certain plants have made colored leaves, and typically it'll put out the colored leaves well in advance of the flowers. I'm guessing that, and I'm not enough of a botanist to be sure about this, but I'm guessing that it puts a lot of energy into the flower, and it's less energy intensive to make this absolutely gorgeous red plume, which appears to attract all kinds of birds and other pollinators.
Looks like something that would be really cool in a hat.
There we go. Yeah. So it is. It's a beautiful flower.
It is. That's gorgeous.
And
yeah.
Let me see it too. Right.
That
yeah.
is
But
really
you can see
gorgeous.
right in there is the white flower. So.
Interesting.
Yeah, it is. It's a beautiful thing. I'm going to see if this will root. When I took the dogs out this morning, it was upside down, and that's never a good sign. Stalk of the flower was fine. The plant was fine, but the flower, and that's only about half of the flower. There were 2 sets of bracts left, so, and it's got a couple of others.
Okay.
Plumes like that of flowers and leaves. So yeah, that all. I'm trying to remember the name of the plant, and I can't. And it comes from Brazil, so perhaps one of our Brazilian listeners might know what that is.
Wow.
Yeah.
Okay.
Well, we have a lot of plants in Port St. Lucie and in Florida that are not native, and unfortunately, some of them are crowding out the native plants, and those are called invasive, and like our pepper tree, our famous pepper tree.
Yeah.
And I have seen, I actually went to somebody's home a couple of years ago, and they had pepper bushes cultivated in their garden, and I'm like, yeah, not a good idea.
You have to say hello to our new listeners in Lapland.
In Lapland?
The top of the world.
Wow.
Listening to WPSL on TuneIn.
So, okay.
And I'll bet their internet's better than ours.
We do have somebody calling in.
Mm-hmm.
And that number for anybody else who wants to do it is 772-340-1590. And I'll be getting a name here in a second. Here we go. And it's Jerry on line 1. Thank you for calling, Jerry.
Thank you, Rob. I was just wondering, I had a stroke about a year ago, so I'm kind of hard to understand, but all my life I've heard about the walls of Jericho. I wondered if Jericho was a Jewish settlement, and the part about the Wailing Wall, and there's only connection between the walls of Jericho and the Wailing Wall. And I hope you understood me, because I'd like to listen off air if that'll be okay.
Okay, well, thank you for that question, Jerry. Jerry asked about Jericho. Was Jericho a Jewish settlement? And, of course, the story of Joshua, and that's actually an interesting story. It's one that takes a little bit of working through. And then he also asked about the wall in Jerusalem. And I will tell you that Wailing Wall is actually a derogatory term. You probably don't know that, Jerry, so I'm not saying that you did that. But the proper name for it is the Western Wall.
See, I've only heard the Wailing Wall.
That was a comment. It's a derogatory comment because some people were so emotional when they first got to it that they wept.
Yeah, well, I've seen that. Yeah.
Right. And so this idea that Jews run around wailing.
Oh, boy.
Yeah. So
the
Western Wall. And it's actually the Western Courtyard Wall. It is not the wall of the temple. It is the wall of the courtyard around the temple, because the temple area had a secure space around it, which you can imagine they would want, particularly if they were preparing for a festival or something like that. They'd want to be able to clear out the crowds until they were ready for them. In fact, there was a beautiful ceremony of opening the temple. We don't really know what that looked like, but there are 15 steps up to the temple itself, and I can actually just imagine there are 15 Psalms of Ascent, and I have this image in my mind, and it's purely my imagination. I completely own this one, but I can see the Levites lining up on the steps, singing one of those psalms, everybody taking one step up, singing the next one, taking one step up, singing the next one. So it would take like about 10 to 15 minutes to open it, but it would be this ceremony of walking up the stairs singing, playing the Psalms of Ascent, and then opening it up and letting the people in. Yeah, I can imagine that. I can imagine that. Yeah. So that's the Western Wall, and of course it's in the old city of Jerusalem, leading up to the Temple Mount. The wall itself, they cleared out an area and a plaza, and they are doing excavation underneath it. And that has some people nervous because, of course, it's down into the bedrock under the city. And there's all kinds of things going on in that area. But there's a great big plaza. There's several sections to the wall, but it's the courtyard wall. And so there's a men's section, a women's section, and then a little bit off to the side is what they call the mixed section. So.
Whoa, wait a minute.
Yeah.
This is the
it's a big
21st
wall.
century?
Yeah.
A men's section and
there's
a women's
section. There's a men's section and women. You can talk to the Orthodox Jews that
still?
Still.
What?
Yeah.
Oh, gosh.
Yeah. Still.
Oh, brother. Okay.
And it's cultures are hard to change sometimes.
And it's from within, though.
What do you mean by from within? I mean, it's Israel's. It's the Orthodox group.
That's what I mean.
There's a movement called the Women of the Wall that's been around for over 25 years already, that are trying to be able to pray out loud in the women's section. Because in the Orthodox, there's this rule against a woman's voice, because it might be just too tempting, and guys can't exert. Never mind, I'm not going to say that. I'll curb myself back in. Let's get back to the Jericho.
Yeah,
so
I think we're safer there.
Yeah, we definitely are. So that's an interesting story, right? Joshua brings down the wall, and that's a story that has captivated perhaps the Hollywood in many people. And by that I mean you picture this marching group with their trumpets, right, shofarot, horns, blasting them multiple times a day, marching around the city, making a big to-do, and then the walls miraculously come down. Well, there's probably a whole lot more to the story, and it's there. It's in the text, but you have to read it again carefully. So we have this woman, right, who's a harlot, who has a red flag out of her window, and the text tells you that her window is on the wall. It's on the wall of Jericho.
Wait a minute. There's a red light district back in the day?
There was a red light district back then.
Okay.
So use your imagination a little bit. You've got a group circling the walls of the city is closing the gates because they're being sieged, and that's their best defense because the walls are very hard to breach. They just are. It took the Romans years to breach Jerusalem, and you can still see the Roman encampments around the city walls, not the temple walls, but the city walls. So there's multiple walls. That was how they defended things back then. And so Joshua and his group are circling and blowing horns. Now, if you're inside the city, what are you going to be watching? Are you going to be watching this harlot in the back with her red flag out her window? Or are you going to be watching the guys marching around with great aplomb and blowing horns?
Well, how cute is she? Sorry.
She's in her apartment in her house, right? And so if you read it carefully, what you might realize is that Joshua's fighters are coming in her window on the backside of the city because everybody's focused on the horns in front and what's going on. Is Joshua getting ready to lay siege to the city? Is he going to bring a battering ram? What's he going to do? Meanwhile, in the back, people are scaling into her house, and who knows where they're hiding. And after this goes on multiple times, there's enough people inside that they can get to the doors and open them, the gates of the city. And that is how the walls came down. It's not that they tumbled. It's that the defenses crumbled.
I'm not going to touch that line at all.
So, yeah.
That's very tempting. Oh, my goodness. Oh, okay.
So,
by the way, I sent you something. I don't know whether you had a chance
yes,
to
you
look
did. A thing about AJR.
Yeah, I'm proud of my alma mammy, Loyola Marymount.
And it's an interesting piece because it's actually the school and the seminary have moved physically into one of the buildings of Loyola, and will operate as an independent school from that space. But at the same time, obviously, students can avail themselves of classes in both Loyola and AJR. So it's kind of an interesting arrangement. It sounds like it grew out of a partnership between the folks running both schools during the COVID shutdown, because they talked about cooperation between the two in instruction and things like that during the Zoom.
Well, I got another little tidbit from one of the Loyola basketball coaches I met in Orlando a couple of weeks ago. They're going to take one of the buildings for Muslim Institute.
Oh, okay.
And I hear the cardinal is not too happy about either one of these things. Hey, so what? Private school. I mean, we've had these battles when I was in school and in the 60s.
It's an interesting arrangement. And, of course, California real estate is so precious. And I can picture where there is some synergy associated with this, and that these schools are going to pay some amount of rent. And so it'll be more than what it costs to have them on the facilities, in the facilities, and it'll cost the schools less than running their own buildings wherever they were located prior. So I see a win-win, and that there's a lot of that kind of synergy and creativity going on in California, partially because it's driven by economics. You can't afford, unless you owned your home 2 generations ago, it's very hard.
And with the shrinkage of enrollment that they've had, it makes a lot of sense. You don't want to have empty buildings, especially on the bluffs overlooking the Marina del Rey. You talk about expensive property.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Sure.
And so it makes sense for colleges and universities to start to look at new models of synergy. And that's what an independent school located on the grounds is kind of an interesting concept. But it makes, as you said, complete sense to not have empty buildings. And
I remember going on, again, this goes back to the 60s when I was traveling with the basketball team. We used to have a Friday Mass and with a rabbi and an imam and our chaplain. That was always.
Yeah.
And I remember the cardinal just went ballistic when he heard about that. But, again, Loyola told him, this is a private school.
Yeah, they do what they do.
And you're not welcome.
They do what they do. Yeah,
Yeah.
they don't answer to him. He's not used to that.
No, he's not.
So I do have, and let me go back because I realized that I did not answer one of Jerry's questions, which was Jericho a Jewish city? And the answer is really no. It never became a Jewish city.
Oh, okay.
I mean, it fell, quote unquote, and it was ruled, but it's not listed as one of the Jewish cities. But it's one that probably the initial population that was there, for the most part, stayed. And I'm guessing they just paid a tribute to be defended by Joshua and his group. It was more about allegiance within the land rather than displacing people.
Interesting. Okay.
I mean, there probably were Jewish residents after that. But that gets to, the word Jewish doesn't really start until after Judea is created. So you have the northern kingdom of Israel and the southern kingdom of Judea. And after a while, you have Samaria, which is kind of like a belt between the two of them, which is where today Nablus in that area is. So when did people start calling themselves Jews? Not until very late. And so in Bible days, in biblical period, they're more likely to call themselves Ivri, Hebrews, or Israelites. And there's a separate kingdom of Israel after the two kingdoms split. The kingdom is united under David, and probably not entirely peacefully. Certainly he conquered many places, and that simply, in those days, I'm going to guess, mostly meant money coming into the coffers of the king.
Well, as you say, follow the money.
Follow the money. And in return for that, the communities would have the army defending them against outside marauders. And so there's a value on both sides of this equation, because the stronger army is going to be able to defend you against other armies. And if you've got a united kingdom, and nobody's going to attack every city, so the army can move to where they're needed. And it keeps the inner part of the kingdom more at peace. And Solomon still has the united kingdoms, but his sons are not able to keep it. And so some children of David go to the northern kingdom of Israel, and others stay in Judea. And it is the kingdom of Judea that falls to the Romans. The northern kingdom of Israel does not lose its independence. Herod Antipas is able to keep that. Herod had 4 sons named Herod. It's really helpful. But the one who's in charge of the northern, even though they're the ones with the zealots, and they're sending them and that's why there's such animosity, because they're harassing Rome in Judea. They're not harassing Rome in Galilee. In Galilee, they're paying the tribute. They're behaving better. They're more status quo. So the ones that are anti-Roman are coming down into Judea, and they're coming down along what's called the King's Highway, which is a coastal path that was followed between coming from Europe using the land bridge going to Egypt and Africa. And they're harassing the supply routes there. And that's why the line in Christian scriptures of "can anything good come out of Galilee?" Because people can hear the accent. They know where you're from by the clothing you wear. Now, you can change your clothing, but most people can't change their accent easily. And so, that's why as soon as Jesus opens his mouth, they look at him and say, "You're Galilean, aren't you? You're all from Georgia, ain't you?"
Yeah, southern twang.
Yeah. And it's the easiest way that I can represent that. To consider the difference between the inner parts of Florida, the north of Orlando into the agricultural area, they sound very southern. You come down here, where there's a significant population of transplanted northerners, snowbirds who rooted.
Sound like Long Island.
Yeah, well, and you hear a lot more of various New York and New Jersey and even New England accents down here, and a blending of that. And the kids coming up through school don't have the southern sound. They have that northern blended accent. They don't have a full New York, they don't have a full New Jersey, but they have this homogeneous northern U.S. Sound to their English, even if they were born here. And the ones who were born in Fort Pierce, a little bit more twang. You can still hear it. And kids that have been born more recently don't have it. And it's language is always fluid and changes. So back in the day, back when Rome is coming into Judea, and of course they came into Israel and Judea after the Greeks had come in and wreaked havoc. But of course, when Rome conquered Greece and took over, they didn't change. And that's part of the point too. It didn't all become Roman. The eastern part of the Roman Empire was still very Greek. Thank you, Aristotle. Not Aristotle. Thank you, Aristotle, for teaching Alexander the Great. Because that's how we have such Aristotelian stuff going on throughout what had been the Roman Empire.
Oh, by the way, IRSC happened to play the Myrmidons.
Ah, okay.
I knew you would know because of the Greek aspect of it. the Myrmidons going all the way back to those days. Yeah.
Well, we want to sound like warriors, right? Sports teams.
I knew you would get this. I knew it.
Excuse me. Sports teams like to sound like warriors.
Yes, that's true.
The nastier, the better sometimes, right? Excuse me.
So true.
So, yeah. So you've got all of that going on. And you've got a battle of East and West and how it's merging. There's a great song out by Mr. Nicky about ancient Greece. He does history songs. And his line is that Alexander mixed the traditions. And indeed he did. He went throughout the then Greece, the Greco Empire. And he liked what this guy was doing, and he liked what that guy was doing, and he liked this, and they all got blended into Greek culture. So that's where we get some of that Zoroastrian influence coming in, the idea of the pathway to heaven or falling down into the abyss. That's Zoroastrian. And going to the light, the morning star, the eastern star of Lucifer. Ooh.
No thanks.
Yeah. It's the star of light. It's the star that. It's the morning star. Yeah.
Okay.
See, that's how it gets blended, and stuff kind of meanders and mangles through the traditions, and that's why when somebody tries to explain all of that to a Jewish person, we all look and go, "Huh? What do you mean?" Because Judaism doesn't have Lucifer. We don't have an eastern star that we are looking for. And
but the Zoroastrians did.
But the Zoroastrians did and do. But it's and it has certainly, whether or not Zoroaster thought of them allegorically or not, is difficult to prove or disprove. I'm not knowledgeable enough about the sacred text to have an opinion there. But it certainly today in Zoroastrianism is understood very symbolically and allegorically as a battle between good and evil, light and dark, which is a very common theme. And to that end, to all of our Hindus, happy Diwali, because Diwali started last night.
I saw that on Twitter. Yeah.
And that is the story of the battle of good and evil, and the victory of good over evil, light over dark. And that's why they light lights for Diwali. Oh, a festival of lights in the winter.
I've heard of that.
Imagine that. And the book of Maccabees, since we're getting close to that, and it's going to happen right after Thanksgiving on the Gregorian calendar. Thank you for being so out of sync this year. But the Maccabees have a discussion in the book of Maccabees about when do they want to do the festival of Sukkot. They can't do the dedication of the cleansed temple at the traditional Jewish time of Sukkot, which would have been in the September-October time in the Gregorian calendar. So they look around and they decide to overlay it on the festival of lights of others, so that it is the dedication of the temple, the beginning of light coming into or coming back to Judea and the temple and all of that. So, yeah, kind of an interesting thing. There's a lot more mixing than people realize, and so it's celebrated with candles and with oil. Actually, it would have been oil back then, because candles hadn't really been developed into the way that we use tapers today. They would have used oil lamps. And it's interesting to note that some caves have even Roman oil lamps, and they're slightly different than indigenous oil lamps. So archaeologists can tell the difference right away. And so why did people go into caves? They obviously need oil lamps if they're going to go inside the caves, because they're dark.
But the caves were shelter, right?
Yeah, the caves are shelter. And, they're easier to defend, although, yeah, you might be boxed in, but there's lots of places in a cave to hide behind. You and the bats and all the other little critters that live in caves. Yeah, they probably were more accustomed to those things than we are today.
Well, thanks a lot.
Live and let live, right? So lots of different things going on, and we are coming up to the Festival of Lights, the Jewish one of Hanukkah. And as I said, it's going to happen the weekend after Thanksgiving, so it's going to be an interesting quick time. There was a great image a couple of years ago when when Hanukkah actually started. You had Thanksgiving on Thursday, and I think Thursday night, either Thursday night or Friday night, was the beginning of Hanukkah, so it was right up against it. This time it's going to start Sunday night, so it's a couple of days, not a lot of break.
Hey, you can't cover Black Friday, for God's sakes. Never mind.
You can and did that one year. and they came out with Thanksgivica, right, was the comment.
That's great.
And the New Yorker magazine had a great front cover.
I love the New
Yorker. It was a turkey sitting there, and the turkey has this look like, what the heck's going on behind me? And in the back of the turkey is a Hanukkah menorah, a Chanukiah, and it's singeing the feathers of the turkey in the back.
I love it. That's
and
great.
So, there was like, what's this right behind me? Getting a little close there, guy. It's a great look on the turkey's face, and it's a great image. Okay, here in New Yorker, if you're listening, if anybody can tell them, make that into a T-shirt, and it probably would sell this year very well.
Yeah.
In the near future. I'd buy a T-shirt that had
Sell
that
it on Amazon, folks.
Yep, there you go.
There it is.
The New Yorker front cover from a couple of years ago. I am dusting off my old T-shirts from Thanksgivica. I looked at I have some young person, and I don't remember who it was, but they came out with a Hanukkah menorah, Chanukiah, that is a turkey, and the candles are in the spread out. It's got the spread out tail like a
sure.
All cocks will do, and it's got the candles up in the feathers, and it's great. So you could get that finished, or you could get it to paint. I did my own and painted my own, so I'm going to get that out, and we're going to light that one this year. And we do have our Night of 10,000 Lights in the temple where everybody will be invited, and that's the Shabbat in Hanukkah, so it's the week after the beginning. And I'd have to look at my phone, and I can't look at my phone because it's streaming. So that would tell me which Friday it was, but it's the Friday after Thanksgiving, so it's the Friday after Black Friday. And Black Friday, of course, is not black because of darkness. It's black because that's the day, historically, that businesses were considered to go black. The books got out of the red for the year, and for the rest of the year, they start making profit. And companies need to make profit. Obviously, they make profit during the year, but it's the annualized profit. I'll get my business terms here yet. That's why they gave me the letters after my name.
Yes.
What can I say? And for those who are curious, my next project along those lines is a Lean Six Sigma black belt. But anyway, yeah, I'm playing.
Wait a minute. Back up. What?
It's just some studying that I'm doing to take a test.
A black belt.
It's an academic black belt.
Oh. Okay.
It's not a physical.
Not karate.
No, it's not karate. It's business.
You're going to call you the Karate Kid there.
Yeah. Well, we can talk more about that some other time, but I'm just in the early stages of that, so I've got a long way to go.
Karate?
No.
Oh.
That kind of business.
Okay. Yeah.
So anyway, let me go back and give a shout out. And if anybody wants to give me a call, please feel free, 772-340-1590. We've talked about a number of different things. We will continue to talk more about Hanukkah and the story of the Maccabees, which interestingly is not in Jewish scripture. We have to thank the Catholics for keeping the Apocrypha, the intertestamental books. Apocrypha means hidden, the secret books. And it's the books between the Jewish scriptures and when they end, and the beginning of the Gospels. And there's a set of books that Catholics call Jewish books, but they're really not. They're a collection of intertestamental books.
Wait a minute. Catholics had secret books?
Well, there's lots of stuff. Give me a year in the Vatican Library, but in the catacombs, right?
Yeah, what's in the catacombs?
And
what's really in the catacombs?
I'm sure it's many, many old manuscripts. And unfortunately, hopefully, they have stopped them from degrading over time. Yeah, it hurt me when I first found out that one of the museums in Jerusalem was taping with Scotch tape pieces of the Dead Sea Scrolls.
No.
Yeah.
Come on.
Curators kind of had conniptions when they found that out. So, yeah.
Sponsored by 3M.
Well, and the number of people who have done stamp collections with taping them in place or licking them on. Never mind. How to degrade your stamps real quick.
Oh, brother.
Yep. Sometimes it pays to learn a little more before you do. That's another favorite story. Well, that one is an Oriental story, which is that the person is it wants to learn with this renowned master, and finally gains a chance to meet one-on-one with the master, and comes in and is just trying to really impress the master with all that he knows, and he's just constantly stuffing stuff, and a know-it-all kind of mentality. And so the master signals for the tea to be poured for the two of them, and the guy comes in and he starts pouring the tea, and he doesn't stop. He keeps pouring and pouring and pouring, and of course it overflows the cup and falls down the table into the lap of this potential student. And the student screams and says, what are you doing? And the master says, when the cup is already full. To try to put anything more will overflow. So if you already know everything, what can I teach you?
Oh, okay. There you go.
Right? So when people know everything, they're not open to new information. And that's a really important thing. People don't realize it. When you think you know everything, that is a way of shutting people off and telling them, I'm not open to anything you might teach me because I already know it. And so, yeah.
I can't believe that there are closed-minded people in the world.
Oh, no, nowhere. What can I say? You know, it's so very often in courses, students will take a pre-test and a post-test, and students, because they're perceived being tested, they really want to do well on that first test, and so they'll Google and find the answers or something if they can. I'm not saying every student does that, but they don't get it. They're not expected to know the information or be able to find it. It's what do you really know at the beginning, and if you've gotten a 90 on the course, then you're going to probably be bored. It's going to be harder to learn a whole lot more in that course. But what can I say? So, yeah. People need to understand some of what's going on, but life is good. So I've got this beautiful, beautiful magenta kind of plume going on here. And there's lots of fall flowers out there.
So can you plant that?
I'm actually going to try.
Will it root?
I don't know. But you can see here it's got branches.
Yeah.
Right, it's got some branches going on here. There we go, Mevo. You can see it too. And since these are bracts, which is a kind of leaf, here's one that's only partially red. And clearly there has to be enough sunshine that it doesn't need these bracts to make food for the plant. But there might be enough stored in here to... there's not... Yeah, you know what? I think it will root because I feel the bumps that are the pre-roots.
Okay.
So I will try.
So is that a full?
Yeah, I'll cut it down, and yeah,
full
that was growing out in the backyard. Where it's sitting, it gets full sun, and
it's beautiful.
It is beautiful. It's I have a sneaking suspicion that it has roots down below its pot. It's in a pot in a container, and I have a feeling a taproot has gone down through because it bloomed. But it was in that carrier to go to and from the plant show, and it hasn't moved in a couple of months because it just got so big, and I was going to cut it down and root it, and I haven't gotten one of those round tuits for that plant. So I have a sneaking suspicion when I finally get to it, the home root will be down through. We'll see.
Yeah, that's gonna be beautiful, just beautiful.
Yeah, the leaves are really big in it. And it's a beautiful little plant. So, yeah. So anyway, back to the story that I wanted to tell about Rick. And I want to thank him for all of the cuttings that he gave me that are working on their roots right now. He donated some cuttings to us for the plant sale. So a shout out. But here's the funny story about it. I was there looking at a couple of different things. And he said to me, do you have a radio show? And I said, because we were talking about the plant sale, actually. And I said, yes. Yes, I do. It's Ask a Rabbi, and it's on WPSL, WSTU. And all of the places that Google Home and Alexa and all of those other things that can listen to us. And he said, yeah, I thought I recognized your voice. So.
Yep. That's happened to a lot of our clients. They get stopped in Publix, you know.
Yeah. So that was kind of cool. So we swapped some plant cuttings.
Neat.
Yeah.
Good stuff.
Yeah. So some exciting things.
Where's his nursery?
It's on Salerno. If you come off of Canner heading toward the college.
Yep.
On to IRSC. It's right above Kane. It's just north. I think it's north. It's closer to Canner.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
Just on that side.
Okay. Cool.
So there's actually 2 nurseries down along Salerno between Canner and the college.
Yeah, well, we can give him a shameless plug.
There you go.
Yeah.
So they got some great, gorgeous things. There's some trees and plants, and he's got some orchids that just came in. So, yeah, lots of fun things. And, of course, we do have a plant sale coming, and that one's going to be after Thanksgiving as well.
Oh, no.
That'll be the Sunday and Monday, the beginning of Hanukkah.
Oh.
So that's a good time to come and get a plant for somebody. And then we're actually going to move the December plant sale. Right now, if we follow the fourth Sunday and Monday, then it would be after Christmas, and we're going to move it the week before. So that 1 month we'll do third, and then that way people can get a last-minute gift if they're shopping for Christmas.
Well, they have leap years and stuff on the Gregorian calendar. Why can't you move a plant sale?
We can move a plant sale one weekend. and there's a very selfish reason for that, which is that a lot of people do go on vacation.
Yes.
Over the winter holidays, and yeah, it's easier for us to get staffing if we're not going to do it in that 1 week period.
Sure. No, that makes perfect sense.
Yeah. So yeah, things are quieting down that way. We've got Thanksgiving. What a great idea, right? To be thankful. It's a powerful. We actually do that every Friday night. We have a section in our service. The 92nd Psalm is considered the Psalm for Shabbat. So let's look at the Psalms for a minute. There's 150 Psalms in the book of Psalms. Christians have 151. Slightly different numbering, but it's the same basic set. And that is the early prayer book, the Psalter.
All right. So why the difference?
Because over time, the copying of the books and the numbering of verse and chapter, not 100% in agreement. There's often a 1 or 2 line jiggle. There's just little differences between Christian scriptures of what Christians call the Old Testament and what Jews call Scripture. And the order is different. So we go for the first 5 books, right through Deuteronomy, and then Joshua, Judges, Kings, whereas Christian go Joshua, Judges, Ruth. Okay. There's a difference because for Christian reading of scriptures, the lineage of Jesus is important, and Jews look at the book of Ruth as literature. It's in the writings section, so it's much later. The writing section starts with Psalms, and Psalms were the early prayer books. If you read through them, that's not hard to understand. They're poems of praise. They're not prophecy, Jewishly, but they are praise. In fact, some sections are actually called the praising, the Hallel, the praise of God. And there's the Song of Ascents, and there's 15 of those. As I mentioned earlier, there's different sections. There's actually 5 complete books inside the book of Psalms. And certainly by the time of the Dead Sea Scrolls, the first 3 books, pretty solid. The last 2 still a little bit in flux. So there's some Psalms in the Dead Sea Scrolls Psalter that are different, that are not in the canonical scriptures. And there's not a whole lot of difference between Christian and Jewish scriptures, although there are some differences in who they're ascribed to. So the first line of some Psalms say a Psalm for David, or they might say a Psalm of Korach, the sons of Korach, the members of the Korach community. And there's a Saf, and there's a number of different attributions in the beginnings of the Psalms as to which community had them or which group. And they're traditionally called David, but they're not all Davids. Certainly not. And how many of them were just followers of David? Not so clear. Right. Korach, or B'nai Korach, are the members of Korach, or the sons of Korach, the children of Korach. B'nai Yisrael, the children of Israel. Or the members of Israel, like B'nai Brith, members of B'nai Brith, of the covenant. Lots of interesting words as we cross languages. But in any event, the Psalter, back to the Psalter, it is the early prayer book. And so the rabbis ascribe to each day of the week a specific psalm. And for Shabbat, for the Sabbath, which we will read tonight, the 92nd Psalm starts out, Tov lehodot. It is good to be thankful to God. And so we take advantage of that when we read it in our liturgy. Before we read it, I will poll the congregation as to what we are grateful for. Because Shabbat is actually a weekly holiday of Thanksgiving.
Okay.
It's a chance of sitting back and thanking God and each other for the bounty that we enjoy during Shabbat.
So the books of Psalms, where can you find them in Jerusalem? Or are they in Jerusalem? The actual, going back to the original.
Well, I don't know that there's... you certainly can see some of the Dead Sea Scrolls copies of them.
Well, that's pretty
That
much
would
it.
be at the Shrine of the Book. There's a wonderful exhibit at the Israel Museum. And you can see the Isaiah scroll. That's the one that goes up and down, and it's only allowed to be open so many hours a day in an effort to keep it from degrading any more than it already has. But they've got catacombs as well, where they store different pieces and bring different things out for display. And some of that's to minimize the degradation over time.
I mean, can you see those, or
Yeah, you can see chunks of them.
Pretty much gone.
I don't know that we have an actual first edition of the Bible in any form. We have, the first 5 books are copied through Torahs, and that's an interesting Sifrei Torah, books of Torah, and that's the first 5 books. So that's Genesis, Bereshit in Hebrew, through Deuteronomy, Dvarim, and those first 5 books are copied according to what's called the Masoretic text, which means the traditional text. And those are made by hand, letter by letter, from a certified scroll, copied by a certified scribe, and checked by another certified scribe. Although now they're actually starting to check it by computer, because they can program a computer if the scribe writes what's called a tikkun Torah. What's a tikkun? A tikkun is a study book that's used for people who chant Torah, and it's got the full Masoretic text with the vowels and the notes on one column, and then it's got written in Torah script on the other side. And if the Torah is written with each column matching this book called the Tikkun, which is a study book, then the computer can check it and see if it's got everything in the right place. But prior to that, it was checked by a person. And it's an interesting procedure that's used. You have to use natural daylight, so you can't do it at night. And you obviously aren't going to do it at a holiday. That's why it takes a year to write a Torah. They can only write one column. And the way that it's done, you look at the certified scroll, and you say out the letter. So Vav. And then you go over to the one that you're writing, and you say Vav, and you put down the Vav. You look at it again, say Vav, and you look back to where you'd been. So it's this really long, letter by letter, space by space, copying of the text. And a Torah scroll does not have punctuation, because they didn't use it back then. And it certainly doesn't have numbering of the verses. It's just the text. And depends on the scribe how accurately the spaces are there or not there. It's left and right justified, written, of course, from right to left.
Hey, Siri, Vav.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, and of course, there are discussions. Can you program a robot to write it? And the answer has been no so far.
Yeah, I would think not.
Even though it probably would be more accurate and less likely to make a mistake.
Why would you say that?
Because humans make mistakes.
Well, yeah.
So do
robots.
So do programmers. No, the robots.
Well, yeah, programmers.
Programmers make mistakes.
Yeah.
And maybe that's part of the fear. is that if you teach a robot to scribe it and it scribes 30, it'll put the same mistake in all 30. But we teach mistakes too as humans. It was very humbling. The very first bat mitzvah celebration at which I participated, the student, the young girl celebrating, was the daughter, or is the daughter, of an Israeli. And sitting there for a minute watching her mom turned to me and said, because I had made a tape for her to help learn the Torah portion, and she looked at me and she said, she makes all the same mistakes you made on the tape.
Oh,
yeah.
No way. Did she really?
She did really, and she had. She did do that. I could hear the mistakes in her. And, but you already know that I don't enjoy listening to me. It's not uncommon among folks who record things. And so that was the last time,
That's
actually,
funny.
that I taught by making a tape. That was the last time, because I wanted the students to make their own mistakes. And partially because, here's the piece, I can tell how a student is studying by the mistakes they make.
Okay.
There are different mistakes. So, for example, like we've talked about the Red Sea versus the Reed Sea. So if you're going to make a red reed kind of mistake, you're working from the English. You're not working from the Hebrew, because Adam and Suf are not close enough that you're going to make the mistake. The letters M and N in English are very close. They're not close in Hebrew. In Hebrew, you're much more likely to make an murus mistake, because those two letters are similar.
Wow.
So it's the kinds of, so I'm giving away my clues to my students now. But I can tell how and what they've studied by the mistakes they make. Because usually when we make a mistake, we don't totally blow it. We only slide a little bit off of the correct answer.
Coming soon, 3D printer for the Torah.
I'm sure that some things are done by 3D printer today that would amaze us.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. What can I say?
Yeah.
Someday that technology will get a lot less expensive. Jewelry right now is being done by 3D printers. The wax is for jewelry.
Wow.
So, yeah. Or it can make a prototype that you can make a mold from.
Yeah. Sure.
Lots of different uses.
Yeah.
So it's been a wonderful time. Thank you to Jerry and anybody else who would like to call. You certainly can give a call next time, or you can host an episode of Ask a Rabbi. Please contact the radio station. They'll be glad to help you do that. This is Rabbi Shafir Lobb for Congregation Eitz Chayim, your Jewish home on the Treasure Coast.
You've been listening to Ask a Rabbi right here on WPSL, Port St. Lucie. Talk to the Treasure Coast, webcaster to the world.